I'm 76 years old, and I never thought I would say this out loud. I believed in love my whole life. I believed that no matter your age, companionship was a blessing. But after 60, something changes. Your heart changes. Your needs change. Your peace becomes more valuable than butterflies. I tried dating after 60, thinking it would bring warmth into my later years. Instead, it taught me lessons I wish someone had told me earlier. This isn't bitterness. This is clarity. And today I'm going to tell you why I regret dating after 60, and the truth no one wants to say out loud. When I turned 60, I felt invisible. My children were grown, my husband had passed years before, and the house that once echoed with noise became painfully quiet. Friends encouraged me to put myself out there, telling me I was still vibrant, still attractive, still deserving of romance. At first, the idea felt exciting. I imagined soft dinners, shared laughter, someone to hold my hand during evening walks. I wasn't looking for passion like in my 20s. I was looking for companionship, someone who understood loss and aging and the strange beauty of surviving this long. So I created a profile, answered polite messages, and eventually agreed to meet a man named Richard. He was 68, charming, and said all the right things about loyalty and honesty. For a moment, I felt chosen again. But what I didn't realize was that after 60, dating isn't just about feelings, it's about baggage, decades of habits, unhealed wounds, financial complications, adult children with opinions, health issues, and deeply fixed lifestyles all collide. Richard didn't just come into my life alone. He brought unresolved anger from his divorce, expectations about how a woman should behave, and subtle insecurities about aging. Slowly, I found myself adjusting, cooking the meals he liked, changing my schedule to fit his routines, listening to long stories about his past while mine felt less important. I told myself this was compromise. I told myself love requires flexibility, but deep down I felt something shrinking inside me. After decades of raising children, supporting a husband, and finally learning how to enjoy my own independence, I was once again rearranging myself to fit into someone else's comfort. That was the first red flag I ignored. At 60, peace is precious. You fought too many battles to give it away cheaply. Yet I was willing to trade my quiet evenings and self-made routines for the hope of not being alone. The truth is, loneliness can trick you into accepting less than you deserve. And I was about to learn just how costly that decision would become. At this stage of life, energy is not unlimited. In your 20s and 30s, you can argue, forgive, rebuild, and start over without thinking twice. After 60, emotional energy becomes sacred. Every disagreement feels heavier because you no longer have decades to waste recovering from heartbreak. With Richard, small misunderstandings quickly turned into exhausting conversations. He was set in his ways, and so was I, but somehow it was always me expected to bend. If I expressed discomfort, he called me too sensitive. If I asked for space, he accused me of being distant. I began to notice how often I was explaining myself, defending my boundaries, justifying my need for independence. Instead of feeling supported, I felt evaluated. Dating at this age often means merging two fully formed lives, not building one from scratch. That sounds romantic, but in reality, it means neither person truly wants to change. I had spent years building a peaceful routine, morning tea on the porch, afternoons volunteering, evenings reading in silence. Suddenly, my time revolved around phone calls, expectations, and subtle obligations. He wanted daily check-ins, constant reassurance, and eventually discussions about moving in together to save money. The pace felt rushed, but when you're older, some people push for quick commitment out of fear of being alone, fear of running out of time. I realized that fear was driving both of us in different ways. I feared loneliness. He feared instability, and fear is not a healthy foundation for love. What disturbed me most was how quickly my calm disappeared. I started sleeping poorly, overthinking conversations, worrying about saying the wrong thing. At 76 now, I look back and see clearly if a relationship steals your peace more than it adds to it, it is too expensive. After 60, your nervous system deserves gentleness, not emotional roller coasters. I had mistaken attention for affection and companionship for compatibility. There is a difference, and it took me heartbreak to understand it. One truth no one talks about is the financial vulnerability that can come with dating later in life. By 60, most women have either secured modest stability or are carefully managing retirement savings. We are not building wealth, we are protecting it. Richard began casually mentioning shared expenses, complaining about rising costs, hinting that life would be easier together. At first, it sounded practical, but practicality can mask dependency. I had worked hard to maintain my independence, to ensure I would never be a burden to my children. Slowly, I noticed how often he expected me to contribute to dinners, small trips, even helping him temporarily when he had a cash flow issue. It wasn't dramatic or obvious, it was subtle. And subtle pressure is the most dangerous kind because it makes you question your own instincts. Was I being selfish? Wasn't partnership about helping each other? But partnership requires balance, and I began to feel like a safety net rather than a beloved companion. After decades of giving, emotionally, physically, financially, I was tired. Yet I found myself once again in a role of support. Many men our age are also navigating retirement fears, health bills, or divorce settlements. Love becomes entangled with logistics. Romance becomes negotiation. Instead of dreaming together, we were calculating. Instead of laughter, there were spreadsheets and subtle guilt. I realized that dating after 60 isn't just about hearts meeting. It's about estates, inheritances, adult children's concerns, and legal complexities. My children gently questioned his intentions, which created tension. I felt pulled between defending him and protecting myself. That stress alone was enough to make me pause. Love should not feel like a financial strategy meeting. At this age, security is sacred, and I learned that guarding it is not selfish, it is wise. Another painful realization was how deeply habits are rooted after 60. When you meet someone at 25, you grow together. When you meet someone at 65, you collide. Richard had his television volume blaring every evening, a diet that worried me and a resistance to trying new things. I had my quiet rituals, my preferred ways of organizing my home, my structured mornings. Neither of us was wrong, but neither of us was flexible. Small irritations became constant friction. He disliked my need for solitude. I disliked his need for constant company. Compromise felt less like teamwork and more like surrender. I began to ask myself, why am I trying so hard to fit someone into a life that already feels complete? Society tells women that being partnered equals being fulfilled. But after decades of marriage, motherhood, and responsibility, I had finally discovered something powerful: contentment alone. Dating disrupted that contentment. I started measuring my days by his moods. If he was distant, I felt anxious. If he was cheerful, I felt relieved. That emotional dependency surprised me. I thought maturity protected us from that. It doesn't. The desire to be wanted never fully disappears, but desire is not the same as necessity. I didn't need a boyfriend. I wanted validation. And once I recognized that, everything shifted. After 60, self-awareness becomes sharper. You see patterns more clearly. I realized I was replaying an old role, the caretaker, the peacemaker, the one who adapts. Only this time I had the wisdom to step back before losing myself completely. Health is another reality that changes dating after 60. Conversations that once centered on dreams now revolve around medications, doctor appointments, surgeries, and limitations. Compassion is beautiful, but it can quickly turn into responsibility. When Richard faced a minor health scare, I noticed how naturally I slipped into caregiver mode, driving him to appointments, managing his anxiety, adjusting my schedule. It all felt familiar, almost automatic. But I had already lived that chapter with my late husband. I had held hands in hospital rooms, whispered prayers in waiting areas, and carried the emotional weight of uncertainty. I did not have the strength to relive it so soon with someone new. Dating at this age means acknowledging that illness is not hypothetical, it is probable. Are you ready to nurse someone again? Are you prepared for them to nurse you? These are not romantic questions, but they are necessary ones. I realized I wanted companionship without obligation, affection without dependency, yet real relationships rarely work that way. Love, even later in life, demands presence and sacrifice. I asked myself honestly whether I had the capacity for that again. The answer, though painful, was no. I wanted peace more than partnership, and admitting that felt both heartbreaking and liberating. Perhaps the hardest truth was recognizing how society pressures older women differently than older men. A man over 60 who dates is seen as lively and admirable. A woman over 60 who chooses to stay single is often pitied. I internalized that pity without realizing it. I thought finding a boyfriend would prove I was still desirable, still relevant, but tying your worth to someone else's attention is dangerous at any age. I began noticing how much effort I put into maintaining his interest, choosing outfits carefully, watching my words, softening my opinions. Why was I shrinking at 70 to be accepted? That question haunted me. The confidence I had built through survival, loss, and independence was quietly eroding. One evening, after a trivial argument, I sat alone in my living room and felt an overwhelming wave of clarity. I missed myself. I missed my uninterrupted evenings, my emotional steadiness, my freedom to exist without negotiation. Loneliness had pushed me into dating, but ironically, I felt lonelier within the relationship. There is a unique solitude in being unseen while sitting beside someone. That realization broke my heart more than any breakup could, because it meant I had abandoned myself first. Ending the relationship was not dramatic. There were no shattered plates or screaming matches, just a quiet conversation where I admitted I could not continue. He was surprised. I was calm. Walking away at 72 felt different than walking away at 32. There was no fear of starting over, only relief. In the months that followed, I rediscovered the joy of my own rhythm. I traveled with friends, deepened my relationship with my children, explored hobbies I had postponed. Most importantly, I felt stable again. Dating after 60 is not inherently wrong. Some find beautiful companionship, but for me, the cost outweighed the reward. I learned that love is not always about adding someone. Sometimes it is about protecting what you have built. After a lifetime of giving, choosing yourself is not selfish. It is sacred. I regret dating not because love is bad, but because I ignored my intuition. I confused loneliness with need. I confused attention with alignment. And I almost sacrificed my hard-earned peace for the comfort of saying I wasn't alone. Now at 76, I can say with certainty, solitude is not emptiness, it is space. And in that space, I've finally found myself again. If you're over 60 and wondering whether you need a boyfriend to feel complete, let me tell you this. Completion does not come from companionship, it comes from self-acceptance. Dating isn't wrong, love isn't foolish, but your peace is priceless. Protect it, listen to your intuition, and never trade the life you've carefully built for the fear of being alone. Sometimes the greatest love story you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. If this message spoke to you, make sure you join me here every day at 8 p.m., where we share honest conversations, real experiences, and the kind of wisdom that only life can teach.